Every swimmer can benefit from creating more propulsion. Hi, everyone. Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. Today, we're going to talk about a strategy that I find really effective for helping swimmers learn to use their hands more effectively to create more propulsion, and that's the idea of contrast hand postures. So, smarter hands equals more speed. So, the better swimmers' hands can interact with the water, the faster they're going to swim. They're going to create more propulsion. More propulsion means more speed. And so, it's not necessarily just the skill or the technique, but it's how they manipulate the water, how do they manage the water, and these are some subtle skills that are more difficult to see, and they're certainly more difficult to teach. And so feel for the water is definitely real. We've all seen swimmers that have it and swimmers that struggle to do it. The good news is it's something that can be trained, it's something that can be developed. And certainly some swimmers have a head start. They're just born better, they just have an advantage. Other swimmers just learn faster. Again, that's an advantage. However, anyone can improve. We just have to provide the right novel sensory experiences for them to do so. And unfortunately, just swimming a lot doesn't work for most swimmers, and even a lot of drills don't work for most swimmers. So we're going to have to use different strategies in order to get the results that we want. The real issue we're facing is that if they can't feel it, they can't fix it. And the challenge for us as coaches is we can't necessarily coach it. It's not a specific skill or a specific action that we need them to do. It's something more subtle than that. And so the traditional strategies of bend your elbow, move your hand here, put your head in this position, they're not going to work because we can't really describe what we're looking for in those terms. So how would you even explain what to feel or how to feel? What explanations would be effective? And I'm coming up with blanks. So I haven't had success with that strategy, so I'm looking for other options instead. And the other issue is that almost all drills are designed to improve specific skills. They're designed to improve head position or timing or kicking or whatever it is, but they're not designed to address the underlying sensory awareness that builds and supports feel for the water and the ability to create propulsion. So we need a different approach in order to help swimmers learn this key skill. And again, as I alluded to, if they can't feel it, they can't fix it. So what we have to do is find a way to get them to feel it, to be more aware, and ultimately, if they're more aware, they're going to have the opportunity to create a change. We just have to get to that point. So one of the ways that I found most effective to do so is to have swimmers contrast their hand postures. So they're going to use two different hand postures at the same time. So maybe they're swimming with a single closed fist, open hand in the other hand, or they have a single paddle in one hand and then open hand in the other, or they have a paddle on one hand and closed fist on the other. And when they do that, they're going to get different sensations at the same time in both hands. And that way is going to magnify what they feel and the differences that they feel, and it's going to draw attention to that. The issue is that a lot of times swimmers aren't really able to feel it because it's the same old thing, but when we give them something very different, that's going to allow them to develop a better feel and awareness of what's happening when they move their hands and interact with the water. And so when they have two different postures, can they feel the difference? That's the first step. They need to figure out how to pay attention and figure out what's different about what they're doing. Then, can they minimize the difference? So let's say they have a paddle in one hand and an open hand in another. And so there's obviously going to be more pressure on the paddle hand. Can they figure out what to do with the regular hand so that they're creating more pressure to try to equalize it towards the paddle? Same thing if one hand's closed, one hand's open. Can they manipulate the closed hand, the closed arm, so that they can create more pressure to make it more similar to the open hand? And so these are great sensory challenges, great sensory tasks that are ultimately going to help swimmers learn to feel things and then also how to manipulate what they're doing with the water to create different pressure sensations. And if they can do that, they can create more propulsion. And you don't have to just make it a sensory experience, you can have them perform. If they're swimming with one closed fist, have them descend, have them hit certain stroke rates, have them hit certain stroke counts. That's going to challenge them to figure out how to perform, even though one hand is different than the other. At first, it's going to be weird. At first, it's going to be goofy, but then they're going to figure it out. And that means they're improving their ability to interact with the water. Creating a great sensory experience is an awesome start. Unfortunately, that's usually not enough to allow for continued progress. To improve in anything, there needs to be a progression of challenge, and here are some strategies to do that when you're using contrasting hand postures. One, start adding stroke counts. You can either ask them to take more strokes, less strokes, alternating strokes. You can do whatever you want there. Just give them objective numbers so that they have to change what they're doing and they have concrete goals. Same thing with the speed. Ask them to swim fast, ask them to swim slow, ask them to change their speed, descend, build. It's all good because you're creating situations where they have to do things differently. They have to experiment. They have to figure it out. Same thing with the resistance. Now, they're going to get a whole lot more pressure on their arm and in their hand because of the resistance, and that can magnify the differences between the closed fist, for instance, and the open hand. Now they can feel those differences even better, and now they can try to manipulate them to try to get them to equal out. You can change the contrast. So if you start off with closed fist and open hand, that's going to be one thing. But if you go to closed fist and then paddle on the hand, that's going to be a much bigger contrast. That's going to be a bigger challenge. You can use a band and a buoy, and now they can't use the legs to compensate. They've got to figure out how to make things happen with only the arms. And then you can add fatigue. Do things that are difficult. Do things that are challenging. When they're put in situations of fatigue, they're going to figure different things out. They're going to learn different things, and that's ultimately going to develop their fitness as well so that they can execute these skills when they get tired. So don't just stop with having them do a few 25s. Start integrating it into your training, and that's where the real changes are going to be seen. It's a strategy that's effective. It's a strategy that's more effective when you progress it and challenge it. So here's a simple set that you can use to implement contrast hand postures. So they go 6 rounds, 450s backstroke to send 1 to 4. So round 1, single tennis ball in the hand. Then round 2, switch it to the opposite hand. Single paddle, opposite hand. Single OK sign, opposite hand. So they're using different postures, different positions, and they're trying to equal out the pressure between the two sides. And first, they got to feel it. Then they can try to manage the pressure. And then they have to also do that while descending. And so a lot of different options, a lot of different ways to help swimmers feel that and start to learn. Second set, a little bit longer, 2 rounds through. Same basic idea, same basic pattern, except now we're going to go single tennis ball, single paddle, and then single tennis ball and paddle for the hundreds. And then we have one final 100 that they can just swim with. So their goal here is to try to be really consistent with the stroke count on round 1. And then on round 2, they're going to negative split at the same stroke count. So they have to find more speed without changing their stroke count. And so that's going to be even more of a challenge with these different hand postures. So these sets provide great learning opportunities, and over time, they can learn to be more and more effective with how they're interacting with the water, and that's ultimately going to lead to more propulsion, which is ultimately going to lead to more speed. Hope that was helpful. As always, keep it simple.